SLT Mobitel Home Broadband සමගින් non-stop ගමනකට data බෝවන්. SLT Mobitel Home Broadband සමගින් non-stop ගමනකට data බෝවන්.
දසනකාන්තී චූර්ණය සහිත ලීවර් ආයුෂ් දන්තාලේපය දත්වල ඇති ප්‍රශ්න 10ක් වළකයි.
Tonight, bigger issues. President Ranil Wickremesinghe emphasizes on the country's non-alignment policy as he says Sri Lanka will stay away from rivalry from superpowers. New resolution. Core group on Sri Lanka to bring about a new resolution to UNHRC in Geneva regarding promotion of reconciliation, accountability and human rights on the island nation. Solutions. Committee on Parliamentary Affairs announces need to set up National Council to provide solutions to the economic crisis and other national issues. All this and much more coming up tonight on First at 9, this Wednesday the 14th of September 2022.
Vim Deara milliliter CA Smart Pack එක රුපියල් 85ට දැන් වෙළඳ පොලේ.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to AdaDerana 24's English News. I'm Andrew Bernard. Now, the core group on Sri Lanka is expected to present a new draft resolution to the United Human Rights Council regarding the promotion of reconciliation, accountability and human rights on the island nation. The core group expressed their concern over human rights in Sri Lanka and developments that have taken place in the country since April this year due to the economic crisis in the country. The group also called on the government to hold on its end of commitment in the dissolution of the country's political authority. The core group consists of the United Kingdom, the United States, Germany, Canada, Malawi, North Macedonia and Montenegro. In its draft proposal, the core group has called on the government of Sri Lanka to fulfill its commitment on the devolution of political authority, which is integral to reconciliation and the full employment of human rights by all members of its population. It also encouraged the Sri Lankan government to respect local governance, including through the holding of elections for provincial councils, and to ensure that all provincial councils, including the northern and eastern provincial councils, are able to operate effectively in accordance with the 13th Amendment to the Constitution in the country. The core group went on to underscore the importance of addressing the underlying governance factors and root causes which have contributed to this crisis, including deepening militarization, lack of accountability in governance, and impunity for serious human rights violations and abuses. However, the core group expressed concern at the human rights impacts of the economic crisis, including as a result of increased food insecurity, severe shortages in fuel, shortages in essential medicines, and reductions in household incomes, while stressing the need to promote and protect the rights of the most marginalized and disadvantaged individuals, including daily wage earners, children, older persons, and persons with disabilities. It also raised concerns over other human rights developments since April 2022, including violence against and arrests of peaceful protesters, as well as violence against government supporters, resulting in deaths, injuries, destruction and damage to houses of members of parliament, and stressed the importance of independent investigations into all attacks for those found responsible to be held to account. The core group further noted that it remains concerned at continued militarization of civilian government functions, the erosion of the independence of the judiciary and key institutions responsible for the promotion and protection of human rights, lack of progress in addressing long-standing grievances and demands of Tamil and Muslim populations, surveillance, intimidation and harassments of journalists, human rights defenders, families of the disappeared and persons involved in memorialization initiatives, sexual and gender-based violence. Now, a resolution to constitute Parliament's National Council Committee has been added to the order book to taken up on the 20th of September. In the meantime, the President Ranil Wickremesinghe says Sri Lanka will take all measures needed to avoid involvement in the rivalry of superpowers, as it would bring in unwanted issues to the Indian Ocean. The head of state made these remarks today whilst attending the graduation ceremony at the National Defence College.
The geopolitics of the Indian Ocean has unfortunately made us the punching bag for Hambantota. Actually, there are about 17 ports that are operated by the Chinese in the Indian Ocean, different companies. There are some more ports that are operated by Dubai World Ports. Now, all the ports are commercial ports. So is Hambantota. It is not a military port. If there is security significance, it is in the port of Darwin in Australia, where you have, as they say, the Chinese ports are operating side by side with the areas with the Australian and the US forces used for training. We don't have that. We don't allow anyone to come and train me. But we do have our Southern Command of the Navy, we have a divisional headquarters of the Army, and we have a detachment of the Air Force. But none of them are involved. They only ensure that this is a commercial port and no less. So though we are a commercial port, it shows our strategic importance that many people sort of come to conclusions which are unwarranted. And I hope the next agreement we come with China will not cause such speculation. It is only about debt reduction for Sri Lanka. We don't want to see big power rivalry, because that big power rivalry gets reflected everywhere. We'll stay out of it, and that's why we want to ensure that the big powers and the rivalry doesn't certainly lead to conflict in the Indian Ocean. That's one thing we can't afford. We are faced with so many problems, non-military. Look at the question today we are facing, many of our countries, of the shortage of food, of economic development, of global climate change. Those are more than sufficient for us to focus on. We don't want our attention taken away by others. Then when it comes to the security of Sri Lanka, we are of the view that in looking after the security of Sri Lanka, that we must also ensure that nothing adverse happens to the security of India. That we have been committed to, and we will go ahead with it. There will be no movement out of it. Certainly our security, that's why we work with India on the Colombo Conclave, on the trilateral security arrangements, and many other fields, especially outside the military field of piracy, of human trafficking, of drugs. All those are useful ones in which we cooperate, India and the other island states.
Now, a resolution to constitute Parliament's National Council Committee has been added to the order book to be taken up on the 20th of September. The National Council will be chaired by the Speaker, while the Prime Minister, the Leader of the House, the Leader of the Opposition, the Chief Government Whip, and 35 members will be added to the Council. The Committee on Parliamentary Affairs convened this morning under the leadership of Speaker Mahinda Yapabewardena. The committee held discussions on the establishment of a national council aimed at providing solutions to the economic crisis and other national issues. Subsequently, it was agreed to take this matter up for debate in Parliament on Tuesday next week with the intention of getting it passed immediately afterwards. The purpose of the National Council will be to provide guidance on national policy formulation and to ensure consensus on the short to mid-term common program aimed at stabilizing the country. The Speaker will assume the leadership of this council, while the Prime Minister, the Leader of the House, the Leader of the Opposition, the Chief Government Whip, and not more than 35 members of Parliament will be its members. Furthermore, several public figures shared their thoughts on the present political situation today.
ජනාධිපති රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මැතිතුමා. එතුමා දුටුවහම ලෝකේ රටවල් බය ඇති. බය තියෙන්නේ දන්නවා එතුමාට රටක් හසුරුවලා රටක් ඔසවලා තබන්න පුළුවන් කියලා ලෝකෙ ඉහළ තැනක. ලෝකෙත් එක්ක සටන් කළ හැකි නායකයෙක් ජාතියේ වාසනාවට ජනාධිපති ධූරයට පත් වෙලා තිබෙනවා.
සමහර කෙනෙකුට කියන්න පුළුවන් ඇයි ඔබතුමන්ලාත් ඔය භුක්ති විඳානේ. මීට කලිනුත් ඔය තිබුණානේ කියලා. ඒ කතාව වැරදි. මොකද ජනාධිපති කාර්යාලයෙන් නිකුත් කළා තියෙන චක්‍රවේලකනේ පැහැදිලිව කියලා තියෙනවා රාජ්‍ය අමාත්‍යවරු පත් කරාට රාජ්‍ය අමාත්‍යාංශ පිටවන්නේ නැහැ කියලා. වගකීම් දෙන්නේ නැහැ කියලා. මේ වගකීම් දෙන්නේ නැත්නම් ඇයි මේ මුදල වියදම් කරන්නේ?
Now, the Ministry of Public Administration issued a circular on the new retirement age of state employees. The circular issued outlines the reduced age of compulsory retirement of public officers up to 60 years. In January 2022, the retirement age of government employees was extended to 65 years. However, as per the Interim Budget 2022, it has been proposed for the retirement age of state employees to be reduced to 60 years. Stay with us for more news on the other side of this break.
කාලගුණය කොහොමුණත් රයිනෝ නං වාලට සේෆ් තමයි මුළු ගෙදරම. Rhino Cement Roofing Sheets. Then you know Rhino.
I know. Big 3.
Uber Eats මගින් ඉදිරිපත් කරන ආදරයෙන් අවශ්‍යතා ඇති අයට අත්‍යවශ්‍ය භාණ්ඩ පරිත්‍යාග කිරීමට වේදිකාවක්.
Welcome back. Now, President Ranil Wickremesinghe launched a new mechanism that targets the revitalization of the rural economy, ensuring that the general public will have enough food until the country gets back out of the economic crisis. The head of state expects to produce 3.6 million metric tons of Sri Lanka's total rice requirement within the country through the mechanism. A multi-sectoral mechanism to empower rural economic revitalization centers to ensure food security and nutrition was launched under the chairmanship of President Ranil Wickremesinghe yesterday. This is expected to establish a socio-economic environment that gives people access to healthy food despite any crisis that may arise. President Ranil Wickremesinghe expects the mechanism established would ensure that no citizen would have to starve due to the lack of food and that no child would suffer from malnutrition. This mechanism will be implemented through 7 committees with the National Food Safety and Nutrition Council operating under the chairmanship of the head of state. It has been planned to produce 3.6 million metric tons of the country's total rice requirement, 50% of the annual big onion requirement, and 35% of the potato requirement locally. Further, the head of state expects to produce 80% of the country's total requirement of corn required as livestock feed this year and expects to locally produce the country's complete corn requirement by 2025. It has also been planned to provide a sack of 50 kilograms of urea at a price lower than the current market rate, while facilities are also expected to be provided to ensure agrochemicals and organic fertilizer can be purchased from the market without a shortage.
ආහාර නිෂ්පාදනය ආහාර සුරක්ෂිත භාවය සඳහා පමණක් නොව මේ සමගම සමගාමී අලුත් ආදායම් මාර්ග උපයන ක්‍රියාදාමයකටද ඒ ගමෙන් ගමට පරිවර්තනයක වෙන්න පුළුවන්. එක ගමක් හරි අපනයන මොහොගයක් වගා ගැනීමට බර දැම්මොත් ඩොලර් උපයන ගමක් බවට අනාගතයේ පරිවර්තනය වෙන්න පුළුවන් සැලැස්මකටත් අවතීර්ණ වෙන්න පුළුවන්.
අපි බැලුවේ අපේ මේ ආර්ථික අර්බුදයෙන් අපි ගොඩ එනකතුළු හැම එක්කෙනාටම ආහාර තියෙන්න ඕනේ. ඒ ආහාර මෙහි නිෂ්පාදනය කරන්න උවමනයි. අපි දැනට මං හිතන්නේ ඩොලර් මිලියන 200ක් විතර හොයාගෙන තියෙනවා පෝර ලබා ගන්නට. තව ඩොලර් මිලියන 20ක් ඕනේ තමයි අපිට හොයන්න තියෙන්නේ. ඇත්ත වශයෙන්ම ඉතා සාර්ථක මහා කන්නයක් කරොත් අපිට මේ ආර්ථික අර්බුදයෙන් ගොඩ එන්න එක මාර්ගයක්. සාර්ථක මහා කන්නයයි සාර්ථක යල කන්නයක් ඊළඟට තියෙනවා. එන අවුරුද්දේ ඒ කියන්නේ ආර්ථික නිෂ්පාදනය වැඩි වෙලා ග්‍රාමීය ආර්ථිකය.
Now, a parliamentary round of discussions was held between President Ranil Wickremesinghe and the Australian High Commissioner Paul Stephens to explore the opportunities for investment in the renewable energy sector in the country. The discussion was held at the Presidential Secretariat this morning with the participation of a group of Australian investors, the President's Media Division stated. President Wickremesinghe has given priority to encouraging new investments in the renewable energy sector as a solution to the current electricity crisis and to ensure uninterrupted power supply. Now, the Public Utilities Commission of the country introduced a dedicated hotline for consumers to seek clarifications on the revised electricity tariffs. The hotline has been launched considering the increased number of complaints that PUCSL receives on the new electricity tariff hike. PUCSL Chairman Janaka Ratnayaka said that the PUCSL aims to bring clarity among consumers on tariff calculations. The public can now contact PUCSL officials on the dedicated hotline 077 568 7387 to obtain clarifications on the new tariffs. Additionally, the general public can connect the PUCSL on 011 2392 607 or 011 2392 608 and email info@pucsl.gov.lk or consumers@pucsl.gov.lk. Welcome back. Now, President Ranil Wickremesinghe issued a Gazette Extraordinary removing the import ban on over 150 items. The decision to exempt 159 items came in line with the country's decision to review the initial ban imposed on imports every 2 weeks and to make necessary amendments. The Ministry of Finance issued an extraordinary gazette on the 22nd of August banning the import of 300 items. President Ranil Wickremesinghe lifted the import controls on 159 items banned in August and allowed the import of the remaining items to be brought under licenses or special approval. In an extraordinary gazette issued on the 22nd of August by the Sri Lankan Finance Ministry, an import ban was imposed on a total of 300 items, which included a host of electric, food, machinery and cosmetic items among many others. The initial import ban was imposed in order to preserve the limited dollars in possession with the national reserves of the country. Among the 159 items removed from the import ban are industrial machinery, a series of building materials, machine parts, tools, ball bearings, agricultural tools and toilet paper. Meanwhile, as the recommendations from the Ministry of Industries and the Ministry of Fishery, some raw materials, capital goods and the accessories needed for fisheries would be allowed. Goods based on a letter of credit established on or before the 23rd of August or an advance payment of minimum 10% of the total amount effected on or before the 23rd of August will be allowed for customs clearance on submission of proof of documents issued by licenses. Imports for duty-free sales and re-export will also be allowed. Now, the Colombo stocks rebounds to the green territory while registering their highest intraday gain in 2 weeks as investors took positions and mainly traded on banking and hotel sector counters. The main index started off on a solid footing and maintained its steep upward trajectory throughout the session. Accordingly, market managed to recoup earlier session losses and closed for the day at 9,914, gaining 165 points. Turnover amounted to 4.1 billion rupees, largely led by transportation and food, beverage and tobacco sectors with a joint contribution of 40%. Meanwhile, 17% of the total market turnover was contributed by the off-board transactions of Expo Lanka. Now, according to Dow Jones, the US markets tumbled today by nearly 4%, bringing the Wall Street to its worst day in more than 2 years. This was due to an unexpectedly high inflation rate of 8.3% witnessed from August 2021 till last August, beating the unexpected inflation rate of 8.1% by economists. Inflation in the US peaked at 9.1% in June, the fastest increase seen since the early 1980s. However, it fell to 8.5% in July, driven by lower petrol costs. According to the US Labor Department, prices rose by 8.3% in the 12 months ending August, faster than the 8.1% that economists had expected. The cost of groceries in the US spiked by 13.5% in the 12 months to August, while housing costs increased by 6.2% and medical care rose by 5.6%, disappointing investors. Following these developments, the Dow Jones Industrial Average sank nearly 4%, while the S&P 500 dropped 4.3% and the Nasdaq plunged more than 5%. This marked the steepest day of decline since June 2020. Overall, the Consumer Price Index, which tracks goods and services across the economy, was up 0.1% from July to August, as a fall in petrol costs was offset by increases in other areas. And that's all the news we have for you this evening. Join us again tomorrow at the same time. Good night.